my name's Beth and I'm from Wales in the United Kingdom. Wales is part of the UK. The UK is also known as the United Kingdom, and it's made up of 4 countries: Wales, Ireland, Scotland and England. And Wales is just on the edge of England, on the mainland, right in the west. It's very famous for its impressive coastline, windy, wet Welsh weather, its impressive highlands and all of its fields with a lot of sheep and cattle. And Wales is special. It has its own language, which is incredibly old and is still being kept alive in several areas of Wales today. The people are considered friendly and happy and very traditional, and they like to hold on to their traditions, and they take their culture very seriously, and they're very proud of their culture. We have a long line of medieval Welsh kings, which puts into perspective just how old the Welsh history is and just how proud the people are of it. The Welsh language is quite complicated. This is the longest place name in Wales. These, and as you can see, these letters are maybe slightly unfamiliar. The double L is something the Welsh are particularly fond of using, and it's not always very easy to pronounce. So this place name is pronounced Llanfair Pwllgwyngyll Gogarwch Wyndrabo Llantysilio Gogogoch. I struggle to remember it a lot. But I think, again, it's one of those things that the Welsh are quite proud of. They like being a little bit awkward and a little bit unconventional, and they take a lot of pride in their language and their ridiculously long place names. So I hope you enjoy learning a little bit about Wales today, and I hope you enjoy getting a taste of Welsh culture through the story and through this place name. So I'm from Wales in the UK. Here is and UK stands for United Kingdom, which is here just at the edge of Europe. Now the United Kingdom is made up of 4 different countries: Scotland, Ireland, Wales and England. And Wales is right at the edge of England on the mainland, just here. So to get from Wales to Montana, I had to take a plane that took me up over Greenland and down into the US, all the way to Montana. And as you can see, Montana is actually pretty much the same size as the UK, which puts into perspective just how tiny Wales is. And I'd be interested to know how many Waleses could fit into Montana. So yeah, this is where I live, and thank you so much for listening to me today. I hope you enjoy learning a little bit about Wales. Today I'm going to tell you the story of the legend of Gelert. Now, for a little bit of context, our story takes place in the 13th century when Llywelyn the Great was Prince of Wales. Now, Llywelyn really enjoyed hunting, and he had many men and he had many horses and he had many hounds, all of which he would take out on him into long hunts, sometimes for weeks at a time, into the Welsh wilderness. Llywelyn loved all of his men and all of his horses and all of his hounds, but he had one hound in particular that he was particularly fond of, and that was Gelert, the hound of which this story is about. So on one particularly sunny day, Llywelyn woke up and decided that he would take all of his men and all of his horses and all of his hounds out into the wilderness on a long hunt with all of his friends. But he decided to entrust Gelert, his most loyal dog, with the honourable duty of staying behind at the kingdom and looking after his son and heir, his newborn son and heir to the Welsh throne. So Prince Llywelyn was gone the entire day with all of his men and his horses and his hounds. And after a long day of hunting and riding and adventuring, he came back tired but happy and content, and he went straight to the nursery where his son and heir was to be found, where he expected to find his son and heir sleeping peacefully with Gelert at his side. He went into the room and immediately knew something was wrong. Gelert came bounding towards him, but he suddenly noticed that Gelert's muzzle was covered in blood. Panicking, the king looked around the room, searching for his baby, and saw that his crib had been upturned and the baby was nowhere to be seen. Believing Gelert to have killed his son in his absence, the king in his anguish drew his sword and struck Gelert, who fell to the floor, dead. The king dropped down on his knees and began to sob, for he now believed that his son and most faithful friend Gelert had passed. And in his anguish, he heard a stirring from behind the crib, and he looked up and he walked over to it, and there was his baby stirring amongst the blankets, sleeping peacefully. And he picked up his child and was overwhelmed with joy to find out that his baby was alive and well. He then looked around the room in confusion, and that is when he saw the body of a great wolf dead behind the curtains. The king, realizing his mistake, now came to the conclusion that Gelert had in fact protected his baby boy from a great wolf that had broken into his child's nursery in an attempt to kill him, and Gelert had risked his life for the life of his only son and heir. Prince Llewellyn carried the body of the great dog out into the courtyard and laid him before the kingdom, and the next morning a tremendous funeral was held for the faithful hound, in which he was buried in his favourite spot under a tree in the most beautiful location in the kingdom. And the dog was honoured and remembered for many, many years to come. Today, we still tell this story on many occasions. Children will often be read it as bedtime stories or in schools. It's also told on the Eisteddfod Day, which is the celebration of St David's Day in Wales, our Welsh saint. And in Caernarfon, in the north of Wales, there is the village Bedd Gelert, which is supposed to be the final resting place of Gelert, the legendary pooch, and literally translates to Gelert's grave, where supposedly the most prime example of a man's best friend lays to rest today. I grew up in Wales, so I've only ever lived in Wales. My family are from England, but they moved to the town of Aberystwyth, which is on the Welsh west coast. It's a small university town, a lot of windy Welsh weather, and raggedy coastal regions, and I really like living in Wales. It's one of my favourite places in the world, but I am obviously a little bit biased. I live with my dad and my brother, and we have 2 dogs. I have a very naughty beagle, and his name is Rocket, and I like taking him on long walks along the coastal paths. And I have a very old Labrador, and her name's Izzy, and she spends most of her time sleeping in the garden and barking at the wind. And so I didn't really get the opportunity to learn very much about the United States and American history during my time at the University of Aberystwyth. So I was really keen to come to the US on a study abroad program, and I liked Montana because of the hills and the mountains and the trees and the kind of very vast and kind of the vastness of like the nature here, and so I was really excited to come here, and I've had a fantastic time, and I think Missoula is fantastic. It reminds me a little bit of home. It's a kind of smaller, quirkier little town, just in a very different, albeit very beautiful setting. And even though I do miss the kind of the sea and the Welsh windy weather, I was very happy to kind of swap it for the Montana, Missoula climate for a little while, and I really enjoyed my time here, and I definitely hope to come back here again.